it became very clear very fast that there was this gap in the market, and she was transitioning out of the job that she was doing. And I said, hey, what if we take this to the online space and really help moms heal their inner child so that they can raise emotionally healthy kids? Because ultimately that's what we want, right?
Mhm.
Like our biggest insecurities are, I am not enough in some capacity, and therefore I'm gonna damage my kids in some capacity. Like that is the internal lie that goes around and around in our brain. And together we can really help a woman move forward.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone had a great weekend. We attended the concert in the park on Saturday, and we saw the Faith vocal band, which was really cool. It's like one of the ones that we try not to miss every single year just because we enjoy them. But it was just a great evening, beautiful weather, fun to be in community. We met some friends there, and just a nice compliment to our wellness. But anyway, this is episode 22 of the Erie Wellness Podcast. I'm really excited for you to hear this discussion that I had with Tricia and Nancy today. They are a mother-daughter team. Their business is called the Essential Thrive Tribe. And what they're about is their signature program helps moms heal their inner child, regulate their nervous system, and raise emotionally healthy kids through confident conversations. The result is generational patterns broke and a deeper connection in this tech-heavy age of parenting. I can't wait for you to learn more about what your inner child is, hear their insights and stories. Let's dive into today's discussion. Welcome, Tricia and Nancy.
Thanks.
Hi.
So let's start off first, Tricia. I'd love to hear a little bit about your background. What you were doing before starting Essential Thrive Tribe, and what led you into this kind of work?
I actually started working for the Walt Disney Company many years ago, and we worked in Florida for about 10 years, and my job ranged all sorts of things from corporate alliance to frontline management to training and leadership development. And when we moved from Orlando to Colorado, I was very sick and wasn't really able to focus on it while I was in my career. But once like I stripped that away, it became very apparent that I was quite unwell, largely from burnout, but from some other things as well. And so I went on this journey and ultimately found out that there just weren't a lot of options to me. And so like other than taking medication or seeing a specialist, like it didn't feel like there were very many options. And so at some point, I had struggled with chronic migraines for 7 years, and a mentor of mine sent me a bottle of tree resin from the Amazon forest. And she said, take this. And in 10 days, my migraines that I had about 4 times a week were completely gone. And so at first I struggled with some resentment that like nobody had told me about this. Like I suffered in pain for 7 years. And why didn't anybody say anything? And so, at first it was like that poor me mentality. And then it really shifted to like, well, somebody's got to say something, like somebody has to. And so I plunged into studying plant medicine and just what is available to us on the earth and not synthetically created in a lab. And that evolved into ultimately helping women who were struggling from career burnout fix their nervous system and digestive tract, because right, like that, isn't that what we do? Is once we kind of accomplish something, we try to help other people do it too. And so I have helped over 1,000 women in the plant medicine space. And what was happening is that as I would coach them, there was this emotional component that I could not help them get past. And and so anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute, but I'll leave you with that cliffhanger for now.
I love that you were able to share, your story and then kind of transition into helping other women. So I'm talking to just the two of you today, but on your page it says 3 generations and it includes your daughter in that. Can you share her role in growing your business?
When we decided to join forces and become a business, she really wanted to be a part of it. And so I won't let her have social media. I think in many ways it's a negative space. But I said I would teach her marketing and how to contribute to content. And so I'm actually really glad you asked that question. She's a big part of what we put out on Instagram, and she kind of serves as an actress. So
Mhm.
a lot of times we'll mention like what my mom said to my daughter, right? Because it's kind of coming from me, but it's like their relationship, that
Right.
like vantage point, and that is not all the things that my daughter struggles with necessarily. It's just how we communicate the message, and so she's the one that is kind of writing, asking the questions based on what her friends are asking her at school.
Mhm.
I mean, she is a tween and now a teen, and so she enjoys her role as like, "Hey, what about this?" Or "This is what we're struggling with," or just she comes home all the time and just has new ideas, and then we're like, "All right, let's call Nana."
Mhm. I love that she's bringing the real world, like, problems that's happening in her life and what she's seeing with her friends.
Yeah,
That's so awesome.
and kind of it, in some ways, an actress. I mean, ultimately, it
Mhm.
is marketing, right? They're little mini commercials.
Yeah. And Nancy, you have got a background in therapy, especially around childhood trauma and family dynamics. Can you share what that journey looked like for you and how it shaped what you do now?
Sure. I started practicing marriage and family and individual therapy in my mid 20s and had my three children all during that time. And because I was a woman and there were a lot of men in the office where I worked at the time, a lot of the women who had experienced some kind of childhood trauma migrated towards working with me because they were kind of afraid of men to some degree.
Mhm.
And that's how I just had to do a ton of reading. I had my master's degree already and my license, but I had to do a ton of reading to find out how to help these women. And one of the things that I stumbled on, I guess you could say, was this book, Your Inner Child of the Past by Hugh Missildine. And it was just life altering in terms of understanding that our inner child is still making decisions, sometimes big, sometimes small,
Mhm.
within us. There's just, and you'll talk, when you talk to older people, they'll tell you, I don't feel a day over 30 or whatever. You stay young, especially if you cultivate your youngness in as you
Mhm.
age. And so sometimes the trauma is still there too. And so a lot of the work that I did with women all through those years, I practiced for almost 35 years, was very much about healing their wounds that they experienced, but maybe they even remembered it inaccurately. And so sometimes it was just simple work like, you're believing a lie. Are you okay with believing a lie? And we would unpack why it's a lie and why that wasn't true. I had an experience. I'm probably going into this too far, but I had an experience really recently. My brother sent me, he had moved all of our they weren't VHS, they were like 8 millimeter tapes when I was little that
Mhm.
my parents took. And I watched what he had transferred onto a little, thumb drive. And oh my goodness, some of the assumptions that I made about who I was and what I was thinking when I was 10 and what I thought what normal was were not were not accurate. And I'm in my
Mhm.
60s. And so to find that out, even though I had dealt with a lot of my own inner child stuff, it was kind of revolutionary. I was like, wow, I didn't know this and that and the other thing. So, I think the window into the past and being able to understand it as an adult, when at that time we understood it as a child, um,
Mhm.
changed the way we perceive it and therefore the way we function around
Mhm.
it.
So what inspired the 2 of you to go into business together as a mother and daughter team?
Well, this has been a dream of mine for a decade or so. And she was off in her career doing her things. And as I was coaching women and realizing that we were getting kind of these stumbling blocks, I said to her one day, I said, in therapy, do you guys ever talk about supplementation? Like, do you ever talk about how there's 50 hormones and most of them are produced in the gut and they, run through our endocrine system and our glands and our spine, and that it's important to like allow your body to produce the 50 hormones that it needs. And she's like, oh no, we don't really do that at all. And so what you're saying is there's this huge gap at the market where you either have a physical provider or you have an emotional mental provider, and you don't have
Mhm.
somebody that's doing both. And you can do talk therapy all you want, but if your gut microbiome is dead, you're not creating the hormones that you need in order to function, the dopamine that your brain needs to have in order for the hypothalamus to work correctly, then you're gonna get stuck at some point with talk therapy. And then the
Mhm.
same applies to anything that's physical. Like our emotions are held in our body. We've got all this inner child stuff that we may be perceiving incorrectly that is manifesting itself in ways that we don't even understand. And so it became very clear very fast that there was this gap in the market. And she was transitioning out of the job that she was doing. And I said, hey, what if we take this to the online space and really help moms heal their inner child so that they can raise emotionally healthy kids? Because ultimately that's what we want, right?
Mhm.
Like our biggest insecurities are, I am not enough in some capacity, and therefore I'm gonna damage my kids in some capacity. Like that is the internal lie that goes around and around in our brain, and together we can really help a woman move forward.
And the thing
Mhm.
that was cool for me is that I knew I was approaching retirement, and I thought, and I prayed several times, Lord, what's next? And what kept coming to my mind is that I should be mentoring younger women who are in that space of time where their life is crazy. You know, when you have a career and when you have a million kids or and 16 plates spinning, and that's
Mhm.
just what I kept coming to is like, how do I mentor? How do I access these women and come alongside of them and take all this information and all this knowledge and all this practice that I have in my head, but that I don't want to do, you know, hourly anymore. And
Mhm.
she came to me with this. I'm like, that's great.
I know, it's we're in. This is the stage we're in.
Yeah.
Managing our kids and
Yeah, because I totally that was where God kind of put my heart anyway. So
Mhm.
it's very organic and very cool that it came together that way.
Well, I love that the 2 of you are getting the opportunity to work together, and Trisha, when you were talking in my head, I was thinking like, yes, it's okay that, like, I am messed up inside, but I don't ever wanna mess up my kids, like, that is just, like, something that you're like, "Oh, I don't wanna mess with them." But I experience really slow digestion, and I thought I was doing everything with diet and exercise and was still struggling. And it wasn't really until I worked on that emotional regulation and all of those things that things improved. So, it's definitely our health is not all physical, and there's different components that can impact our overall wellness. Absolutely. Um, for someone who's new to this work, how would you define the inner child?
Your inner child of the past is the child that you were that still lives in you. And so I liken it to spaghetti noodles. You know, we want all of ourself to be, you know, long 100%ly grown spaghetti noodles. But what happens when you have even small traumas when you're a child is it's like the spaghetti noodle breaks and then you get stuck at age 5 or at age 8 or 10 or 12 depending on what the trauma was. And if it's a really big trauma, several of your spaghetti noodles get broken. And so you enter adulthood with this box of spaghetti noodles and some percentage of them are broken. And
Mhm.
all of us are going to have some percentage broken because we all have something happen to us that, you know, kids bully us or whatever it might be. And but the people that I worked with for the most part had, you know, half their box was broken. And so our goal was to regrow their spaghetti noodles, if that's a good analogy.
Mhm. No, it is a good analogy and good visual. I feel like some people are visual learners. Um, so when you're talking about inner child, like, how far back do you go? Like, when you start to, like, really try and dig up, like, what's going on?
I ask my clients to tell me what age they are in their mind when they think back to their child. And a lot of
Mhm.
times the work that I'm doing with women who have had a lot of damage is that they develop a hatred for their who they were as a child and they want to get so far away. I just talked to one of the friends of my other daughter and I wanted to do this work with her and I was willing to do it with her over the phone because she's out of state and she couldn't even take the first step. That's how damaged her opinion of herself as a child is based
Mhm.
on the chaos that was going on around us because children are made they're innocent and they're beautiful and so that's the thing that I do is I ask them what age they perceive the damage starting and sometimes it's very young and
Mhm.
it's 10, 12, 14, you know, just
Mhm.
But a story she often tells in the therapy in our coaching program is that there she was counseling a couple, and they had a 1-year-old that was with them, and the couple, they were, she's doing marriage counseling, and the couple started to fight, and the 1-year-old threw up
yeah,
in the office because it
Mhm.
was experiencing the
the
stress
stress of
of
the
the
marital
parents.
discord.
So
Mhm.
what that that exact person is going to do inner child work when they're older, like they're not even going to know. There
No.
it's a feeling instead,
Mhm.
and our job is to uncover that feeling and help them cope and work with it and move forward.
Yeah.
Mhm. Um, our next question was, what types of unresolved traumas, big or small, do you commonly see come up for your clients? But I remember you, Nancy, during the talk that I listened to, you shared it was like a babysitting story from like your college age years,
Mhm.
that something super small to anyone else, but it really impacted you.
Mhm.
So, how big or small are some of these things that are happening to us that kind of translate later? And if you remember the story that I'm talking about, please share it.
Well, I do, but I actually have better stories. So I had a client who was 7, and she was
Mhm.
deathly afraid of storms, and her parents decided that the way that they were going to try to get her to cope with a storm was to put her out on the screened-in porch during a storm. So she's
Mm.
7 years old, and she's, curled up in a fetal position in the corner, scared to death. Well, she ends up in my office at 47, still deathly afraid of storms, and now she has 3 children, and she's affecting them, and they're deathly afraid of storms. And so we had to unpack and she remembered it like it was yesterday. So we just really had to spend time, and some people would have handled that differently, but the her psyche and the way that she's made, it just
Mhm.
made things so much worse. I mean, I think if a parent had gone out with her and put their arm around her and said, "Let's get through this and let's talk it through and let's talk about what's happening,"
Mhm.
that could have been really healing for her, but that's not what they did. They just decided they were gonna make her, man up, and it was just so incredibly damaging. So some people would say that's big, some people would say that's not real big. I mean, it depends kind of on how you're affected by it. And then I worked with a lot of women who had been sexually molested for 5 years, and that's really big. Or,
Mhm.
brutally damaged with terrible toxic emotional language or
Yeah.
physical abuse. So, that's the gamut,
But
right?
there is small too. I mean, think about like our generation as these like helicopter parents. Some of that goes back to the crap that happened on the playground when we had to go outside for 5 hours in a day, and not our parents didn't check in with us. They didn't know where we were. We didn't have phones. My mother knew where I was, but a lot of parents didn't, right? And so think about all the bullying
Mhm.
things that happened on that playground. And so it may be even subconscious that we are helicopter because we never want our child to experience the pain that we experienced as a kid.
Mhm.
Not huge. I mean, it's not, but it is, right? Because it's been life altering to the way that we parent, to
Mhm.
the point of
Mhm.
helicopter parents, when really, if you were to look at that situation, it doesn't mean that you have to protect your child from every danger that's out there.
Right.
It
Right.
just means you got to go heal yourself and heal
Mhm.
the thing that happened to you on the playground. Somebody's got to take you back there to do that.
Mhm. Well, and over time, I feel, and this is my personal opinion, but I feel like parenting, it was a lot stricter. And now you hear the soft parenting, like we have to talk through everything and we need to, dive into how are they feeling and all these things. But versus like back then, they're like, your parents didn't care how you felt. It was like, it's this way or that way. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah, which is
So
we
how do
focus
you see it coming out too?
well, we that's why we focus so much on what the conversation can and should look like. Like we give lots of prompts to moms
Mhm.
to talk to their kids, because what we accidentally do is give our kids all this permission to be whoever and whatever they want to be, instead of asking the right questions. We're just constantly coddling.
Mhm.
Fine, honey, tell me about your feelings. How are you feeling right now?
Well, and the other thing
They're
that's shifted amazingly since I was a child, as opposed to like Trisha being a parent of small children the same age, is the self identity. I we My parents didn't their identity wasn't affected by us. And they gave us enormous amounts of freedom, and the world was safer back then. I will definitely give you that. But they're, our grades, our successes, our sports, our all the things that we didn't change their identity. And one of the shifts that I've seen dramatically is, even when I was a parent of those, teens, tweens, whatever, and now, is that people are more insecure with their own identity, and so they're trying to make themselves successful because their children are successful, which is an
Mm.
enormous amount of pressure on a child.
Mhm.
That's one of the cultural shifts that's happened that I've watched over the course of all these years that I've lived.
Mhm. I've seen as a high school athlete, like, I remember how intense some of the parents were, wanting their children to be the best and do the best, putting a lot of pressure on them. So, yeah, I can definitely see that coming up.
Yeah.
So when talking with clients about their past, what are some common patterns or questions you explore? Like, were your parents impatient? Were they distracted or anxious?
It's really client driven, so it really depends on what comes up.
Mhm.
But for an example that's helpful, if your parents were overly anxious, you're going to have one of two responses. Either you're going to internalize their over anxiety and be the same kind of person and be afraid. I remember I had a woman that I was friends with that was maybe 10 years older than I was. She had one grandchild, and she would not babysit that grandchild because of her anxiety over what if something happens while that grandchild is in her care. And I'm not talking about a week or an overnight. I'm talking about for 4 hours in the afternoon, and she wouldn't do it. And I thought, wow, that's so sad that she's missing out on that one-on-one with those kids, because she
Mhm.
has great fear around what if something happens, as opposed to Ron and I were watching the kids for a week. This is Tricia's friends and people that watch Essential Dog Tribe see that. And we had to take Carly to the hospital because she couldn't breathe. And she ended up in intensive care with a helicopter ride to a hospital with higher level care. So, she lived, by the grace of God, and praise God. But you can give into that fear, or you can say, well, whatever comes up, we're going to handle it. And we handled it. It was
Mhm.
awful. We don't ever
Mhm.
want something to happen again, but we knew what to do. And so that's just an example. Like your anxiety.
What's the other direction they go?
The other direction they go is just to be completely uh,
Careless.
careless. I'm not going to even care what's going on in your life and what you're doing, because my parents hovered, and so I'm gonna completely take my hands off. And the truth is, and this is mostly always true, the balance is somewhere in the middle. You have to know what
Mhm.
your child is doing, to set boundaries around things that really could do enormous damage to them. And at the same time, you don't have to live in fear. So
Mhm. I'm curious about distracted because I know a lot of parents are juggling the work-life balance and all of those kinds of things. So, what happens when your parents are distracted? Like, what happens to you as a result?
You're short.
Mhm.
You project your issues onto them. Um, we I one one of I went to a conference a couple weeks ago, and the speaker talked about information obesity
Mhm.
and how we intake information, and then there's not a lot of application, or there's like not ways for us to get it out. And
Mhm.
so part of that being distracted is the fact that we're hearing about all the things that are going on in our world, and in such a politically charged environment, like we're taking all that on as if we have to do something about it, or we have to. I mean, yes, there's lots of examples around this. I mean, even there was a conversation that we had about guns with my 5-year-old not too long ago, and I think, you know, there could either be because it's so politically charged, right? Like,
Mhm.
we're so distracted with information, we are going to vomit that all over our kids, and it's damaging ultimately. So if your kid asks about guns and you feel one way politically, you might say guns are good and we need them, right? And if right, and then if you feel another way, politically, you might be like they're awful and only the government should have them. That's a wrong response. Both of those are wrong responses, but because we're so distracted by what's going on in our world and we're intaking all of that, we're not
Mhm.
able to projecting onto our kids, and we're not able to just say, well, honey, what do you think?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
you should in every situation, you should be as unreactive as you can with your kids and and ultimately ask really good questions. And you know what my 5-year-old said when I said, "What do you think, honey?" He said, "Well, I think they're dangerous and useful." And I was like, "Yes." And then I said, "What else is dangerous and useful?" And he said, "An axe." And that was the extent of the conversation because he's 5. And if
Mhm.
my 13 asked me, it would be a different answer, right? But again, I just wasn't distracted by the noise of the world and
Mhm.
instead just had a conversation because I know how to do that.
And the flip side of the answer of that question is if you were raised with parents who were constantly distracted and they didn't know how to put down their phone or their whatever
Mhm.
and really key into like Trisha was willing to key into what is my child really asking for in this situation.
Mhm.
I had a client once who never did anything with her child unless she was multitasking. So if she's having a conversation with her child, she's also folding laundry. And in her mind, that was efficient because she worked a lot of hours and she thought she had to do that. And I'm like, yeah, but you're communicating to your child that they aren't enough one-on-one isn't useful time,
Mhm.
your time. And so I have to also do something else. And you're telling them something in that. And so that's the other part of being raised by parents who are distracted is you wonder, clearly I'm not enough because my parent had to do all these other things while they were communicating to me. And the other thing, like I remember another example, I'll never forget this. Um, this girl was a beautiful pianist, and when she would play the piano and play this piece that she was going to play in the recital, her father would walk by every now and then and say, "Oh, that's beautiful." And she told him how important it was for her that he come to her recital. And she really believed that he was going to. He never had before. And she worked so hard to perfect that piece. It was so important to her because she wanted to make her father happy and she knew that he liked the piece. And he didn't show. And she was really sad. And she got home and he was mowing the lawn.
Mhm.
And he was probably 12,
Mhm.
changed their relationship for the rest of her life because
Mhm.
she knew that moment that she could not get his attention, that mowing the lawn was more important than going to this, recital that was 45 minutes. And she's in my office 30 years later telling me about and crying because of this very painful time in her parents' life. And he had no idea that he had done that to her.
Mhm.
But he'd been doing that her whole life, and but that was kind of the straw that broke the camel back for her, and she just wrote him off after that. She wasn't mean. She was as dismissive of him as he was of her. That's what
Mhm.
happened. And as a parent, you have the privilege of being in that person's life, and they need to know that you value. It doesn't mean you have to go to everything. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect in it. It doesn't. But when you do miss something, even with her kids, if I'm going to miss a baseball game or whatever they're playing at the season, I'm going to say, hey, just so you know, I have to go to such and such, and that's why I'm not going to be at your game because I want them to know that ultimately they're really important to me and their stuff is a priority to me.
Right. We have to communicate to our people that we love and care about, what's going on so they see the bigger picture and articulate our feelings towards them. So,
And what matters to them matters to me.
Can you walk us through what working with you looks like, whether it's a course? Do you do one-on-one sessions or is it
We
primarily going through your course?
Right now, we have a course that you can come in at any point, and the topic of it changes
Mhm.
quarterly. And if you do an entire year with us, you will be in a really good place with yourself and with your kids. And all of those times that you're driving your kids to and from activities, feeling like you're not enough, feeling like you didn't get enough conversation time, feeling like you didn't get enough one-on-one time, how to understand your own distorted thoughts, and then how to walk your kids through through understanding their own distorted thoughts. All of that happens in different amounts of the series. And so we take a client on and she stays with us essentially until she's like ready to move on. And so it's a monthly program, and there are 4 touch points a month, which for the price of it is incredible. Like there's just nowhere else that you can get that amount of help. And what's cool is that we have an office hour, and so a lot of it's like group coaching. And sometimes people will say like, well, I don't want to talk about my problems in front of other people. And it's you learn so much. The group that we have going has become really close to one another, and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how similar and alike we are. And oh my gosh, her struggle is the same as my struggle. Oh, and so we're just constantly learning from one another. But then there's this office hour where if you have like a really private question or something really specific, then you have that opportunity too, without doing the one-on-one. Here's an entire hour for each person. And so it's ended up being this just really beautiful, beautiful program. And then they have the option to add on like a supplement regimen. They even have an option to add on diet and exercise based on where they're at in their cycle. I mean, like the offerings that we have as far as like a la carte on top of the coaching program are unique. No, we've never met somebody else that's doing it. And so it makes us, it just is, it's fun. It's exciting. We feel, what is that called? A trailblazer. We feel a little bit like trailblazer. So at the base level, what it looks like is to come in with us on a monthly basis and have these 4 touch points and work through what does it look like to set boundaries on my unhealthy parents or my unhealthy in-laws or an unhealthy brother-in-law, or there's so many examples. We just had a client this past week say, my husband's sister is an alcoholic, and so we want to place a boundary that we're not going to family gatherings anymore. How the heck do we do that, right? And so that's something we work through, and then conversations with their kids. And there's even a quarter in there on helping your kids understand sex and sexuality. And we just clearly, obviously, are very excited about what it does for the
I love how you're building on it too, as you find out like what more.
Yeah, it just is. It's like, okay,
so some of the time I'm teaching.
Oh, go ahead.
And then some of the times it's homework, and we talk about the homework, and then we do this office hour.
Yep.
Okay. And is it a wide range of moms, like from littles to teenagers and college age?
Yes.
Like what kind of like the realm of it?
Yes, I think our youngest mom, we've had a lot of moms with like a 3 or 4-year-old.
Well, we had a couple moms with babies that have babies in the
but they also had
they also have older kids. Yeah.
And then it's definitely that like 3 to 13. It's that decade of parenting.
But we've had a couple guys in their 50s that come in wanting to learn these things.
We've had some grandmas as well.
That's awesome. They're still willing to learn and understand themselves and hopefully help their grandkids and their, kids.
When they come out of working with us, feel more at peace with their circumstances, and they feel more confident in approaching some of the triggers that come up. And it's actually been a little comical because we've had, after about 6 weeks or so, we'll hear moms say, I'm so frustrated with my husband because now I'm seeing all of the inner child work he needs to do. And so just even in 6 weeks, they're really transforming the way that they think about their life, their kids. And it's really cool to see them come through that, to see them be close to each other, like to follow each other on Instagram. And so ultimately I would say peace and confidence as they come out with just a broader understanding of themselves and how they should talk to their kids. And we just teach them how to be less triggered, less reactive. I mean, an example, the other day, a friend's daughter came to her and said, I think I want to lose some weight, and she's a tween, and our moms, most of them would have been like dismissive, and they would have been like, "Oh, honey, you don't need to lose weight," and that would have been the end of the conversation. And instead, just like the story with the guns, the correct answer is to ask a question and to say, "Well, tell me more about that. Tell me why you want to lose weight." And so I, was helping the mom through this conversation, and the daughter said, "Well, I just I feel like my stomach's kind of big." Okay, what's your plan? It's
Mhm.
okay. We don't need to dismiss it just because. No, of course the tween doesn't need to lose weight, but let's help her get there on her own and not give her more baggage because of our reactive response,
Mhm.
our own baggage,
Mhm.
right? And so we all struggled with our weight at some point, and so of course we don't want our daughters to do that. Well, let's just walk her through it. Okay, well, what's your plan?
Mhm.
Well, I could eat less.
Well,
I
and
mean,
there's a lot of ways to talk about that subject without shaming them as well. You can talk about food as energy and food
Mhm.
as fuel as opposed to fuel, just as fun. And you can talk
Mhm.
about the effects that sugar has on the body and the brain and the da da da. So without shaming them or you know calling them out on either side of that conversation, you can just try to educate them about food and its purpose in our life, and help them maybe rebalance the way they think about their own eating.
Mhm. That's a really good point. So how can people connect with you or begin working with the Essential Thrive Tribe?
You go to essentialthrivetribe.com, of course, and you click register now for our program, and you can jump in. It'll give you dates that you can jump in because we want you to jump in based on when the next topic starts. And so
Mhm.
people kind of float in and out, and then they are with us for 3 months or 6 months or a year or whatever works best for their schedule. And some people can jump in and out, and so that's what you do is you go and we actually have. If you use the promo EWP, so Erie Wellness Podcast, but EWP, it'll take off 10% of your subscription with us. And so you just put that in on the website and you're good to go. And then, of course, we do so much on Instagram. So there's a lot to learn there. I think that you won't walk away able to raise emotionally healthy kids just from watching us on Instagram, but it definitely is thought provoking nonetheless.
Well, I'll leave it with 2 questions as we wrap up. What's been the most rewarding part of doing this work together?
Well, for one thing, it's just really fun to have this kind of a connection
Yeah.
in our adult lives, with
Mhm.
my daughter and with her mother. Um, it's very rewarding. We have great um, conversations around it, and we help people, and that's just always really a useful thing to do. So it's just been really fun.
Yeah, we've only been working together. I mean, we didn't even launch until about 5 months ago. And
Mhm.
so I think even just in 5 months, I've become a better parent
Mm.
just from working with my mom. And so I think that's been the most rewarding is just for our relationship and getting
Yeah,
to spend more time together.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a gift. And what is one message you'd love to leave with our listeners before we wrap up today?
Our heart's desire is that we help people get from point A to point B in a way that they want to, and seeing that happen uh, gives us great joy. So I want people to know that our heart is in the right place. We want to help you. This is not, I mean, it's time, so time is money. So there's a small fee, but that's not the point totally. The point is to
Mhm.
be helpful and to use the knowledge that we both have. I mean, I was a therapist for 35 years, and
Mhm.
I mean, I still have that brain. So I want to use it for good. I want to help people get somewhere. And therapy is really, really expensive.
Mhm.
And so I can be helpful to them in ways that doesn't have to break the bank.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, weekly therapy is $600 a month in Colorado. Um, for me, I just You have so much to look forward to. Like, that's what I wanna tell any listener is that raising kids and learning alongside them and growing in your self-awareness, life just gets better and better the older your kids get, and this middle age is wonderful. And if you're confident in your parenting and you're working to connect with your kids and have emotionally healthy kids, like, I see the relationship that her and my dad have with their 3 kids, and it is I mean, you just have so much to look forward to, and so do the work, like, you only get it's kind of like, in fitness, how people will say, like, "You only have 1 body, and so treat it well." You only
Mhm.
have these kids. You only have your just do it. Like,
Right,
Mhm.
learn how to do it
right.
and do it well, and, you just have so much to look forward to.
Well, thank you, Nancy and Tricia. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in today. I hope this conversation with the two of them left you feeling encouraged and inspired. If something from today's episode resonated with you, be sure to check out the show notes for ways to connect with Tricia and Nancy and learn more. As always, thanks for being a part of this wellness minded community. Until next time, take care and stay connected.
Bye.
That's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Erie Wellness Podcast. I truly appreciate you being a part of this journey. If you loved today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. For more daily wellness inspiration and behind the scenes content, be sure to follow me on Instagram at the Erie Wellness Podcast. I can't wait to connect with you again soon.